Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing a tier list on Final Fantasy VIII Bosses. More Final Fantasy VIII content, because Final Fantasy VIII is the best Final Fantasy. Don't at me. And there needs to be a remake. I think the more content we have, the more interest that we can drum up about Final Fantasy VIII and show how brilliant it is. And I want to do it. Simple as that. Rules for this are pretty simple. We've got S, A, B and C, so not too many tiers. Primarily because none of these bosses are what I'd call bad. So this isn't like a all that things really, really bad, we hate them. I think the idea we're going for here is, you know, how good the boss is in terms of design, how it fits into the story, and, you know, just my memories playing it, whether I, you know, liked it or not, or was challenged by it. So, let's begin. At the beginning, I've included the optional bosses, and I've put them in sort of continuity where I think I would normally play them through on a casual playthrough. These optional bosses you can play, most of them you can play at any point during the game, after you can first access them, I think. Yes, so apart from maybe one or two of them, which we'll talk about when we get to them. But okay, let's start at the beginning with Ifrit. Ifrit. Now, according to Final Fantasy XVI, Ifrit is what we're all going to call him, but no, it's still Ifrit. Yeah, don't at me. It's, yeah, Ifrit. Basically, Ifrit is the driving theory test of the Final Fantasy VIII universe, because you need to get Ifrit to go on your seed exam. Yeah, so it's the driving theory test. So it's a good little boss. You know, you basically can learn the main elemental parts by using Shiva or Shiva on him, and realise that fire is weak to ice. It's a good little indicator for that, and you know, it's just a good little boss to start the game with. Not too difficult, not too challenging. Yeah. So we've got Biggs and Wedge next, who are the second boss. You know, they're kind of like the second and third boss, but they come together. Biggs starts off fighting you, and then Wedge joins him shortly after. Shortly before this, that you meet them on the Dollet mission, and shortly before this, there's like a fight, a scripted encounter, which isn't a boss, with an anaconda monster, and that to me feels more like a boss than these two. So I don't really think they're too memorable. I actually don't really think they add too much to the story. I think the vibe they're going for, what we're going for with this, is these are supposed to be incompetent soldiers. Perhaps because, you know, there'd been a war and they'd risen up the ranks because it was easy for them to do so, because there was no one to replace them because all the competent people were fighting. I guess that's a vibe they're going for, because I don't think they're supposed to be much older than your party members, but they keep calling you like young twerps and stuff, and I think it's supposed to be comic relief. Doesn't really land well, so I'm going to put them in C tier. But next we have the Evolret, which basically halfway through the battle with Biggs and Wedge blows them away, literally, and is roosting at the top of the tower. Now, I think this is a pretty important boss battle, because I remember playing it on Christmas Day and it blew my mind. I think it's the first time when you use Squall's Limit Break that he flies through the sky attacking him. And it's a really good, you know, a real challenge actually. If you don't understand the junction system and you haven't, or you haven't spammed and learned enough with the GFs or not, it's quite a challenging boss. And it's the first one you can draw a GF from, so it's a you know, pretty hard on the first go, and pretty challenging unless you know what you're doing. So a good start really, and you know, it's basically your final exam, the final part of your exam really, technically, until we get to the next boss, which is another iconic one, the XATM092, which is Black Widow. And this is the first boss you fight you don't have to beat, so you can kill it. It's weak against electricity. Thunder, again, teaching the elemental things in this game, which is a big part of this game, is that, you know, electricity affects machines, and this game obviously lots the aesthetic because it's quite futuristic. There's lots of mechanical beings that are affected by electricity a lot, so you will use Quetzalcoatl a lot if you like using summons, and you'll use elemental thunder quite a lot throughout the game. I mean, would I actually? I mean, I'm strictly speaking about the boss and where it fits in with the story. It's just the cutscene when you run away from the boss is just absolutely to die for. It's probably the best cutscene in the game. But I think the fact that the boss is a little bit annoying because you have to beat it several times, and it's not really so clear cut how to beat it. I think that keeps it off the top tier for me in terms of how memorable it is. Next is Granaldo. Now I like this boss. It's really easy. It kind of lets you know like the vibe you get from it is that it's basically like you're now qualified fully and you know how to kill monsters. It's quite a simple, straightforward one. It throws other enemies at you, and you got to fight this boss to get and rescue alone for one of the multiple times you rescue alone in the game. Nice and simple, really, but memorable because it's like after the graduation and you go and fight it, and it's nice and cool. I like it. Now Diablos is going to S tier. The amount of times I tried Diablos as a kid and failed miserably is insane. He frustrated the hell out of me. It's like a Dark Souls boss kind of thing, and it's kind of you really need to know how to work the junction system and understand how it works to get a grip of this boss. There's no cheesing him, really. You know what you're doing. There's no way you can just go in and attack him and then hope for the best, because he basically uses gravity attacks to lower your HP and then takes you out one by one. So there's a few strategies you can employ to kill him, and because of the way the battle system and the level system works in Final Fantasy VIII, he's easier to beat earlier on in the game. So you can get tricked into, I think you can fight him, you get given this after the on your first mission, you get given the magic lamp, and any point between disc 1 and 4 you can summon Diablos, and if you're higher level when you're fighting Diablos, then he's a lot harder. So get him as soon as you can and cheese him. So next one's the Fake President. Well, he just sucks. What a pointless boss. I mean, the idea of Fake President is that you think you capture the real president, and he's not really. He's the monster he turns into. But what annoys me about him is that he's supposed to be like a zombie, but the whole, use healing magic on him doesn't work. But it does on the next boss, Gerogero, or Gerogero as I used to call him. You'll notice here that he's blue, because that's what the guidebook shows, even though in the game he's red. Yeah, because apparently, I think it was certainly in Europe, I don't know about the States, but the booklet, the guidebook had him blue because it was seen as too violent to show this blood and guts coming out of some zombie. But in the game, it's still red, so, or was it the other way around? I can't remember. No, that's the other way around. In the game, he's blue in Europe, but in the book, you can see that he's actually red. So, yeah. Different censorship rules, I guess. But basically, yeah, you can just one-shot him with a Phoenix down. I always forget to do that in the game. If I'm like speed running it, or I don't know if you call it speed running. If I'm playing it quite quickly to get the story, I often forget to put the item command on and use a Phoenix down on him, which kills him instantly, which sometimes stitches me up. He uses annoying status element stuff, and he's the first real indication of those. So they're kind of like the first half of the first disc, those bosses, and between them all you really get a good indication, or certainly between all the ones in SA and B, you get a good indication of how the system works. You understand about status elements, you understand about drawing GFs, you understand about thunder and different elements and stuff like that, and it's pretty good mix. And then you don't fight another boss until you get to the end of the disc, which is the Iguions. Now the Iguions, I don't know, they're not bad. They're just, I think they're the first boss that you fight. No, not the first boss. You fight with Irvine and Squall. So you basically, you can draw a carbuncle from these, and they're quite tricky. They can cast Petrify on you, or gradual Petrify, because you've only got 2 party members. You need to make sure that one's supporting and one's attacking. And at the time, pretty much both of the limit breaks of the party members you have are to mainly attack, and you're used to playing with a 3-party member setup, so you might not have a healer necessarily because of the way you've set things up. So they're quite challenging. They're all right, and they're cool how they turn into a real thing from like a gargoyle. Seifer, Seifer's cool. It's the first time you fight a rival. The build up to fighting Seifer's cool. At this point in the story, you think he's dead, and he isn't. So I'm going to put Seifer the first time in the A tier, because it's just a cool build-up, and you finally get to fight your rival one-on-one and relive what happens in the opening cutscene. So that's a pretty cool fight. The first time you fight Edea is the same. I played that multiple times as a kid, mainly because the disc at the end, this is right at the end of the first disc, and my disc kept jittering and scratching and all sorts of stuff, which was a bit of a pain, so I had to keep playing it over and over again. Very memorable boss, very tricky. You have to fight Edea straight after you fight Seifer. But then you get all your party members, and it's a pretty tricky boss this early in the game. When you beat it, you get to the next disc, and then the next boss you fight Biggs and Wedge again, and then Biggs and Wedge second time are probably even worse than the first time because they're so much easier. I mean, I think the idea is it's supposed to show you your progression through the story, but they're forgettable. I think you could take these guys out of the game and it wouldn't matter. You know, they could be generic soldiers as far as I'm concerned, really, personally. That's my possibly hot take. But and next one is the BHF 2512, I think it is. This is the one you fight at the end of the missile base. This is basically again highlighting the thunder thing you've learned earlier. Weak against thunder, and yeah, it's it's pretty. I don't know. It's good. It's a good boss battle. As this annoying laser, and it can pretty much wipe you out if you don't kill it quickly enough. The idea is that after a certain amount of HP, it's like I don't know, generators on top of it explode. And then eventually the final thing explodes and then some soldiers come out of it. I think that, if you get it to a certain level of health, it can, technically uses limit break, which is this laser cannon which can one-shot a character. So again, you've got to make sure that you're prepped to fight it and have certain commands selected in the battle. So it's quite memorable. I wouldn't say it was an A tier boss because it's, an annoying part of the game that I don't like that much. But Oilboyle I'm going to put in A tier because I like this part of the game, and it's the first time where you're explicitly told to use or explicitly advised to use the Elm Attack J command, which is basically putting your elements to your, so your attack has an elemental property to it. You're told when you go down to the MD level of the garden, and these live in oil and basically fire. They're weak. What fire is strong against them, and pretty much if you at that point in the game, if you've got that ability, you put fire on everything, and they go down really, really easily, and it feels satisfying because you've listened to the part of the story. And this is the part of the game where I remember really starting to enjoy it. It just I didn't actually use the junction system properly the first time I played it through, but I remember I had spamming Ifrit because he was fire and then throwing fire magic at them, and they went down really, really easily. They were pretty cool. NORG, I think NORG's pod is going to go in B tier along with NORG. So NORG's the Garden Master. Could have been a lot better, this boss. He's got two stages. Obviously, you got to blow his pod open, and then you got to fight him. And he's got these two orbs which give him magic and give him buffs, basically. And you can't beat them. Basically, you got to keep hitting them and changing their colour because I think that they go from blue, red, and yellow, and they give him different buffs. But if you attack them, they change randomly anyway, so it's really difficult to work out what pattern they're going to be on and how they're going to be done. So I've never really understood it, so I just basically spam everything and just hit him. He's just could have been better in my opinion. Next you fight the BHF blah 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 the second time, which is got your allies in it, and that's really forgettable because you can cheese it at this point in the game. It's just it's a story-driven thing. You fight them again. The bit after it's good when you realise everyone's alive. They went to the missile base, but it's just a pretty. You've fought the boss before. It's just worse. Meh. Next we have this is when the game opens up, and this is when I typically play the Tomb of the Unknown King part, where you fight Sacred and Minotaur. Now, these are a really good boss. I like the Sacred and Minotaur boss, so I'm going to put them in A tier. You do fight Sacred on his own first, and then you fight Sacred and Minotaur together. And basically, what they do is they're an earth boss, and then you get hinted at the beginning of the temple, or what you call a dungeon. There's these I don't know, basically students or whatever run out of the temple and say float, 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 and it's hinting to you the magic to use float, because if you use float, then they can't heal themselves with earth. So it's really, really cool. It's a bit, you can be clever to work the dungeon out. You're going to be clever to work out how to beat them. So they're the first really puzzle type things. Diablos is the first optional boss. These are the second optional boss, and they're a bit more puzzle related. Really, really good. Good little dungeon as well. Fun fact: I remember I couldn't beat Diablos as a kid, and I went and did these guys first and tried to use them against Diablos because there's a GF in the Tomb of the Unknown King. You get into that, and then used them against Diablos, thinking that maybe they'd be the secret weapon to beat him. They weren't, because of course he's a flying enemy and they're earth, and that in RPG world that doesn't hit flying earth. So lesson learnt. What a waste of time. So next we have Odin, who's in Central Ruins, and Odin, the build up to Odin's pretty cool. The Central Ruins are a good little dungeon. pretty clever little puzzles, and he's, you know, but as a boss, you know, I'm going to put him C, because he's dull. He sits there and does nothing, and you just draw a triple from him. I think you got to do a certain amount of damage to him to kill him. I can't remember what it is, but he does have triple, so you got to, like, which is really good magic that you want to draw from him. And yeah, he's really good as a character and as a buff when you get him, but the boss battle's just dull. He doesn't do anything. He just sits there on his horse, like, you know, bit meh. So here's where it gets hard. First you fight Rajin, and then you fight Rajin and Fujin. So I think these are an A tier boss. I'm going to put... Look, there's 2 Rajins there because you fight him twice. He has a limit break, which is really tricky. It's really tricky, this part of the game. The only annoying part about these guys that stops them being S tier is how the boss works, because you're in Balam Town and there's an annoying pattern of how you do it. And I seem to remember you can't save right before the boss. You've got to do the pattern first before you fight them. I seem to remember that. Maybe that was just the way I had things set up. But yeah, you got to go to... There's a save point in Zell's mum's house. And then it's really tricky to get to. I don't remember if you've got to do the puzzle first. I think maybe you do. You can go and find Raging. He's hiding somewhere, so it's a bit of a tricky one. So if you lose to these guys, you have to do quite a bit of stuff again. Very Dark Souls. But yeah, no, they're a good fight. They're pretty balanced. I think basically the trick is to sort of like beat Raging first and then kill Fujin. And also Fujin holds Pandemona, the GF, or Pandemona, the GF, and as soon as you draw Pandemona, then Fujin stops using wind spells, which absolutely cane your party. And Cerberus is a pretty annoying boss that I'm going to put in C. Good GF to get because he casts triple and double on your party, but I remember the first... flashbacks to when I first played him. You fight him in Galbadia Garden, he's right in the middle, and he just... I didn't understand what triple meant or anything like that when I first played it, and he casts triple and he just keeps having turns over and over again. I just remember thinking, this guy sucks, I hate him so much. And I didn't really understand what his buff was, and so the memories of that I put him down below, and he's not really that good a pretty memorable boss, really. And I wouldn't say the reward's good enough to warrant him, you know, being there, really. He's alright, you know. He's good as a GF, but as a boss, no, he's rubbish. And then we have C for the second time. C for the second time, you know, he's B, forgettable, and then the third time you fight him is kind of an extension of when you first fought him. He's just slightly stronger, I think. Meh. And then Edea is the same. You've already fought Edea before. No harder than before from memory. Quite a forgettable boss. Good part of the story because you built up to fighting the sorceress and you're learning what's going on, but you know, there's nothing really different enough about them, those fights, to make them more memorable to me. The end of the first disc fights, the first time round was better in my opinion. Abadon is another one you can cheese with cure spells. There's 2 of these in the game. So I mean, like, I don't know. I think he's pretty dull. There's quite a lot in C tier here. I mean, they're not bad. They're just dull. I think he's probably the top of the C tier though. He's better than the Biggs and Wedge fights, but it's just like, you know. I don't know. I think he's probably bottom of B tier because he's got 2 forms. He stands on his hind legs. There's a bit more strategy to fighting him, and he's quite tricky. You can game over to him quite easily. So he's all right. He's not the worst boss fight in the game, but all right. I've had worse. Let's put it that way. And then we got Fujin and Raging, and you know what? The second time round, Fujin and Raging are just boring because you're just overpowered at that point. Just, you know, whatever, and they just go, yeah, sorry, when you beat them. You know, I get why in the story you need to fight them again, but in terms of how you fight them, and they're not like a massive challenge. The first time around, they're a lot harder in memory. Mobile Type 8 is, you know, a cool looking boss, and I don't know, probably somewhere in B, really. You know, it's just a bit, you know, it's quite challenging. He's got these 2 probes and 2 orbs and stuff like that, you know, but, you know, I wouldn't say as a mind-blowing boss. It's alright. C for the 4th time. Now, C for the 4th time is, I would say, A as well, because it's the last time you fight Seifer, and basically, if you have Odin at this point in the game, spoiler alert, he kills Odin, and there's an absolutely brilliant story segment where Fujin, who's basically just spoken in like 1 word rage things up to this point, breaks character and, you know, says, you know, how much she cares for Seifer, and it's a really emotional part of the game. So the battle has an emotional wallop. He's one of you, and you're trying to turn him around, and then you realise you have to fight him, and it's this kind of like you've actually finally beaten your rival, which is set up right at the beginning of the game. And it ties up that part of the story, so I think it's excellent. I think it might even probably, I'd say it's, you know, one step higher than the original fight with Seifer. I'd say it's really, really good. Next is Adel, and I think Adel is a really good boss fight, so I'm going to put Adel in A tier, because Adel is a clever little boss, because Adel straps Renoa to her, and you only do attacks that attack one of you only attacks Adel, and you can't do like area of effect or multiple target attacks. It's quite a bit of strategy. You've got to keep healing Renoa. One of those bosses appears in Final Fantasy every now and then. It appears in Final Fantasy 9. You play what's it called? Is it the Soul Cage? Right at the beginning of the game. I think it's not even, it's a scripted battle. It's not even a boss, and it's kind of teaching you about that. This throws you towards the end of the game. It's a lot trickier, which is a better way of doing it in my opinion. Jumbo Cactuar. Jumbo Cactuar, I think, is an excellent boss. Getting to him is cool. I just remember having to spam Leviathan, and it's challenging because he will run away from you if you don't deal enough damage quickly enough. And I remember spending hours trying to beat this guy because he's an absolute nightmare. Again, because if you leveled up at this point in the game when you first can fight him, which is towards the end of the game when you first get the Ragnarok. I love his design, and I love the Cactuar enemy has so many good abilities. The Cactuar GF has so many good abilities, and the boss battle itself is really, really cool. I just love fighting him and love seeing the enemies, like, love seeing your party fighting against this massive cactus man. And he's got the 10,000 needles, which can one-shot character, and then he falls over and does loads of damage to you. And I remember it was the first time I started really, when on my first playthrough, understanding how to actually use a junction system properly to beat him. And I remember buying weapons and stuff like that to deliberately beat this boss, so it's good memories playing him. The Tonberry King, wow, that just reminds me of needing sleep as a kid, because the Tonberry King you fight in Central Ruins, where you fought Odin, and you have to fight around about 20 Tonberries, and then at the end of the 20th battle, the Tonberry King comes in, and you got to kill him, and then he throws his crown off and becomes your GF and says, "I'm scared of you," I think. Now, you can do this before getting Odin, but it's trickier because you have to keep leaving and coming back in. You can save the amount of Tonberries you fought. The game remembers how many you fought. You don't have to do it without leaving the ruins. But it's a long, hard slog, but, you know, a good strategy of throwing certain attacks at these Tonberries. The Tonberries are hard as nails, and then on their own. So basically, you've got the round about the 20th battle. Instead of the battle ending and then the Tonberry King appearing, the Tonberry fades out and the King appears, which is really, really cool. And if you're playing it, like, because it says you need to fight 20 of them, I think it's random in the game. It's like between 19 and 21. You might have counted to 19 and not expected it, and all of a sudden he appears, and it's quite cool. And he's just a much, much harder version of the regular Tonberry, and it's annoying because he can smash your health down really, really quickly and kill you. And of course, at that point, you may not have saved. You've got to fight another 4 or 5 Tonberries again. So it's pretty good and hard, really, really hard. A real challenge to get the Tonberry King beaten. I like it as a boss. Bahamut, or Bahamut, top of the A tier. I mean, getting to him is annoying. I mean, would I say he's top of the? No, I think the boss actually is B tier. I love the GF himself, and he's great, but just getting to him is so annoying because you got to like go into this room where like you can't move when the lights are on, and if you move when the lights are on, then you get fought by ruby dragons, and it's just dull. It's just really annoying not being able to move. And of course, if you put the speed booster on the remaster, it's even harder. So, I love Bahamut, and I remember it was the first time I saw the Lionheart ability fighting against Bahamut, so it's memorable. It's not a bad fight by any means, but it's just getting to it. It's just annoying. Ultima Weapon. Ultima Weapon, I think, is... I reckon Ultima Weapon is S tier boss. Probably the boss I remember the most, spending the most time on in this game. I'm playing through Dark Souls at the moment for the first time, and basically, while I'm playing Dark Souls and having to repeat the same bit over and over again, reminds me of fighting Ultima Weapon. The amount of times I attempted him and watch the cutscene where you can drop whatever it is, you drop something down and then the rocks are resonating, and then fight him. Absolutely killer. It absolutely kicked my ass several times. He has a one-shot attack as well, similar to the Jumbo Cactuar. But he can also attack all your party at once. And he just throws meteor as well. So he's annoying because he can one-shot characters and also throws area of effect attacks at you, and it's seemingly random when he does this sort of stuff. So it's, you know, really, really tricky. He's very fast as well, and you've got to, if you want to complete the game, you've got to draw Eden from him. So you've got to make sure you do that first. But the guy's so quick that, you know, beating him is just absolutely nails. Even when I played the game through again on the remaster to get the Platinum Trophy, he was an absolute nightmare for me. And I reckon he is the best boss in the game. So far, I might change my mind moving forward. So next we have the battles in Ultimecia Castle. Now, I think these are kind of, these bosses, I'm going to put all of these in B tier, and the reason, or most of them in B tier, because they're relatively forgettable, but they're all good. They're all kind of the same thing. They're very creative aesthetically, but what I'm kind of saying here is they're all on the same level, because you fight them in Ultimecia Castle. I think Tiamat is probably the best of the lot, and I'll explain them all in one. So basically, you can fight all of these, I think, in any order you want, and what at this point in the game in Ultimecia Castle, your abilities are locked out, and you can choose them in any order. So basically, you can customize a dungeon to your own way of playing. So for that reason, the bosses themselves are kind of different each time. Time you play them. So it's really difficult to sort of say which one of them stands out, because I think the Red Giant's supposed to be the hardest in terms of defense. But by the time you get to him, you can just cheese him because of all the abilities you've got. Whereas if you were to fight him first, he might be more of a challenge. So it's more like the Ultimecia Castle is really, really good overall. The best boss though is a Tiamat, and you fight him. I remember you fight him on the clock, the top of the clock tower, and he has this attack called Dark Flare, and he spells it out DAI Arc Flare, and it's the coolest attack in the world. And you can tell he's kind of like supposed to be Ultimecia's like final battle before you fight her. He's really, really cool. And my favourite boss of the disc. I love getting to that one. I always do him last. I think you're supposed to do him last anyway, but I always wait for him and look forward to fighting him because he's really, really cool. And then next we've got Omega Weapon. Now, Omega Weapon I'm going to put in A tier as well, because it's kind of like the legendary have you beaten Omega Weapon thing. I only beat him a couple of years ago. He's hard, but he's not... He's more annoying hard than he is as memorable. I think Ultima Weapon's a better boss battle. Omega Weapon is a scripted encounter in terms of like he's on a pattern. So he'll cast level 5 death on you, and then he'll cast a series of attacks in order. So once you get his pattern down, you can pretty much beat him quite easily. It just takes a long, long time, and if you make one mistake, you got to start again. So it's kind of like one of those things where I would say that it's very, very good. It's a very, very good boss battle and memorable, but not quite to the same level as the ones I've got at the top tier. Next we have Ultimecia, First Form Ultimecia, and First Form Ultimecia is pretty forgettable. The build-up's cool, the music, the premonition music, which plays when you fight all the sorceresses, is cool, quite a boring sort of thing, really. It's just like a souped-up version of Edea. It doesn't cast anything too amazing on you, but it gets really, really interesting though when you fight Griever, and Griever is cool. And I remember playing it. The setup for Griever is fantastic. You've got you're on this floating platform in the middle of nowhere, and you're fighting Griever. And earlier in the game, you've named Squall's Ring Griever, and I think I've never renamed Griever, but I believe if you can call him whatever you want, and that's what comes out. That's what his name is. And it's like this. You feel like you're like moving into a new world when you're fighting Griever. And when you kill him, actually, when you get to a certain amount of level of health, or after a certain amount of time passes, he casts Shockwave Pulsar on you. And Shockwave Pulsar, the music changes to, I can't remember what it's called, the Legendary Beast, and then basically throws this amazing ability at you. And it's just the most epic moment ever. I think it's absolutely S tier, and he's really, really challenging. I think that's the point where you can start just deleting your magic and blow the magic away. I think Griever can do that. Yeah, Ultimecia and Griever together is, you know, plays Maybe I'm a Lion, the music. A tier, you know, better than the first Ultimecia boss. It's a really, really good battle. It's a bit silly and over the top, the design. A bit over the top, but you know, it's a fantastic boss. But you can zip through that one quite easily compared to the Griever, and then the final one, I would say, is an A tier as well. It's like slightly better than the Ultimecia and Griever one, and that is the final Ultimecia fight, which is actually quite challenging because she uses an ability called Apocalypse. And Apocalypse is just, you know, an absolute nightmare. There's another ability called, is it Hell's Judgment? And it knocks one of your party members down to 1 HP. And this battle was very, very tricky as a kid because it talks through a load of gibberish. Ultimecia will say, like, you know, remember your childhood memories or whatever, and it does it after certain attacks. So, but it does it after you've hit a certain amount of damage. There's like, you know, I think there's about 10. You beat Ultimecia the first time, then she starts drawing from herself, and then after all that, there's like 10 times you hit Ultimecia and then you beat the game. But it doesn't matter how much damage you throw at those 10 times, it's still 10 times. So if you're using like the super duper attacks like Lionheart and all that other stuff like that, then that counts as 1, even if it does like 1,000,000 damage or whatever. So that's something to learn. So at that point in the game, when Ultimecia starts speaking to you, just attack her once, I should say. Yeah. So yeah, I enjoyed reminiscing about this game because I love it so much. What I've got here is I've got the C tier, the bottom tier. The pretty forgettable bosses are both battles with Biggs and Wedge. They're pretty dull characters as far as I'm concerned. The Fake President, which is probably, you know what, actually the Fake President's the worst boss in the game. Probably the only one I would say borderline bad. I mean, it just sucks. Yeah, both times you fight Biggs and Wedge, forgettable characters. The second time you fight the BAHF 2152 or whatever the name is, forgettable. You just have to do it. You know, it's just damaged. It's just no more difficult than it was before. It would have been a bit better if it was like, you know, had some kill switch which made it throw even worse attacks at you. That would have been cool. Odin's dull, but you know, nothing much to him. Cerberus is annoying as a boss battle, and the second time you fight Fujin Rajin is just forgettable because, you know, they don't power up. It would have been really cool if they like become their super form. It would have been like, you know, but I mean, I think the idea of the storyline is that they're conflicted on whether they should fight you or not. But like, if you remember in the Final Fantasy VII when you fight the Turks, which kind of fill a similar void to Fujin and Rajin in this game. The last battle with the Turks, when you go into Midgar, is really cool and really, really tricky. That's kind of what this battle should have been, I think. But, you know, with a shame. In the B tier, we have the first form of Ultimecia. Cool boss, but, you know, pretty much most of Ultimecia's castle is on this row. Because, you know, Ultimecia's castle's great. You know, top of B tier, but you can't. I guess it shows how solid the dungeon is. It's an incredible dungeon. It's probably like, if I were to rank dungeons in this game, it would be the top of the list, and it would be towards the top of the Final Fantasy dungeons itself. But because you just say how solid it is and how consistent it is with how each of those bosses is at the same level. And again, it's not down to the boss themselves. It's down to how you fight them and how the game's designed. So then we have Bahamut, the fight. Again, cool build up, but an annoying sort of setup in terms of getting into the Ruby Dragons, so that makes it, you know, probably would have been an A if it wasn't for that part. If it had been a cooler setup for him in that sense, it would have been a bit better, I think. Granaldo, it's B because, you know, the point of the story is quite cool. You've become a seed, but you know, it's not an amazingly hard battle. Gerogero, you know, it's teaching you about that part, you know, the different abilities you've got. Iguion is, you know, symbolic of the, you know, it's the first real like boss in the game. It's pretty really cool. This whatever it's called, tier B, NORG and his pod, you know, the bosses at this level are kind of just pretty good ones. They're well designed, shall we say. You know, they're not bad at all. The A tier ones, Omega Weapon, you know, really, really good super boss. The Evolret because it's iconic, the XATMO92 because it's iconic, second and third forms of Seifer and Edea, they're really, really cool for the story part of the game, but, you know, as the first disc, but, you know, the bosses aren't that good, but they're really, really good for the storyline, so they're not in S tier. Oilboyles are cool, Sacred and Minotaur as the optional bosses, and then the first time you fight Fujin Rajin, fantastic. Adel's really cool and really clever. Tiamat I love, and then the third and fourth forms of Ultimecia are really, really cool as well. But my S tier consists of Ultima Weapon, which is the best boss battle in the game. Ifrit, the first boss battle in the game and the easiest, but probably the most iconic and just a fantastically well set up boss. Diablos, because of how challenging it is, and how it's not too scripted. It's not quite as scripted as a Mega Weapon. There's a few ways to beat him. Jumbo Cactuar, so many memories, and then with Tonberry King, and Griever is of the 4 forms of Ultimecia is the best. So, let me know what you think. What are your favourite bosses in this game? Thank you for watching. See you later.